From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we talk about the 71 different lake captains that live in Bayview from 1878 to 1968 in the age of sail and steam. This episode, like the others, is sponsored by the historic Bayview Lake Captains Society. Now, this episode is not about a Bayview Lake captain. Oh no! But I think you'll still enjoy it because it is about Bayview's only lighthouse keeper. The only one, folks. His name was Emil Tews, and he's a prominent member of the Tews, T-E-W-S, family fishing empire. And there were some lake captains that were members of that family. I have previous episodes done about them, and I posted the link to those episodes in the description box below. Now, Emil Tews spent some time in the fishing business, in the family fishing business, and then in 1900 decided to branch out and work at the Milwaukee Pierhead Lighthouse as a lighthouse keeper. He did that for at least 9 years, a very possible 16 years, because he became the first assistant lighthouse keeper there. He lived in Bayview for just one of those years while he was a lighthouse keeper, and that year was 1905. And he lived in, and this is why I scanned here, and I'm not standing in front of a house, somewhere between 2457 and 2460 Wentworth Avenue at the intersection of Potter Street. So that's where I am now. Some of you, I'm sure, have recognized the scan that I did. I'm on Wentworth Avenue. His house was on Wentworth Avenue. And it's one of those behind me here. It's just that I couldn't nail it down exactly which one it was. So someone may be able to find out more exact information, and by all means post it in the comments section. Now, 16 years is a long time to be a lighthouse keeper, all at the Milwaukee Pierhead Light. And then after that concluded, he went back to the family fishing business, but with a Bayview twist. And I will not tell you what that is. I will let you find that out in the upcoming episode. Narrated by our narrator from England, Simon Stanhope. So I hope you enjoy what's coming up. Bayview's only lighthouse keeper, the only one, so enjoy it. All right, hats off to Bayview's lake captains, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview, to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today, we won't be discussing a Bayview lake captain, but something just as interesting. We'll be discussing Bayview's only lighthouse keeper. His name was Emil C. Tews, and for 16 years he kept the light burning at Milwaukee's Pierhead Light, serving as its first assistant lighthouse keeper. For a short period, during his tenure at the light, he lived on South Wentworth Avenue. His background and family history was equally as interesting. He was a member of a prominent Jones Island fishing family that operated a large fishing business for many years. When the island's population was evicted around the time of the First World War, he and other family members moved to Bayview. Years after he left the lighthouse, he managed Bayview's only fish store, undoubtedly selling the family's catch. Later, he became a firefighter for the city of Milwaukee for the rest of his life. While Emil Tews was indeed Bayview's only lighthouse keeper, there were nevertheless several Bayview lake captains and others that either managed or had a connection with lighthouses. For example, one Bayview lake captain was in charge of the staff of a lighthouse in New York. Another Bayview lake captain stopped sailing for 1 year to become the first assistant lighthouse keeper at the then new Plum Island Lighthouse on Green Bay. Finally, the man that created Bayview, Eber Brock Ward, lived in a lighthouse on an island in northern Lake Huron for 3 years in his youth, while his father was the lighthouse keeper there. E.B. Ward's lighthouse connection is worth briefly discussing. Early in his youth, Ward lived from 1830 to 32 at the Bois Blanc Island Lighthouse in northern Lake Huron, while his father, Eber, was the first lighthouse keeper there. E.B. Ward's sister, Emily, kept an extensive diary of their experiences growing up there, including a storm in 1837 that caused the lighthouse to collapse. While living at the lighthouse, the young Ward showed that his business skills were already taking shape. He set up his own small fishing operation, catching and salting fish, and then selling them independently. These men all had a connection with Bayview, and some eventually lived here. However, just as with the requirement that only lake captains that actually lived in Bayview can be considered Bayview lake captains, the same applies to lighthouse keepers. None of these we just discussed lived in Bayview at the time they were connected with lighthouses. But a different person did. His name was Emil C. Tews, and beyond his working as a lighthouse keeper while living in Bayview, he and his family also had a substantial professional fishing background on both Jones Island and later in Bayview. His brother, Edward G. Tews, Jr., became the Tews family's only Bayview Lake captain after their family and all of Jones Island population were evicted from the island just after World War I to make way for development. Emil was involved in the family's fishing business for many years, before taking the job at Milwaukee's Pierhead Light. Though while at the Light he only lived in Bayview for a short time, he ultimately served there for 16 years, before returning to the fishing business. He became the manager of Bayview's only fish store on South Wentworth Avenue, most likely selling the fish caught by his family. Emil Tews was born in Posen, Germany, in 1871. He immigrated to the USA in April 1882, with his father Edward G. Tews, Sr., his mother Ava, and their young family of 3 children, that included his younger brother Edward G. Jr. and sister Lizzie. They came to live on Jones Island, where they had 4 more children. William, not to be confused with a cousin of the same name, and sisters Emma, Lena, and Meta. At the same time, Edward G. Sr.'s brothers also immigrated to the USA: Frederick, John, Louis, Ludwig, and William. They, like their brother Edward G. Sr., all settled on Jones Island and worked as fishermen, fish peddlers, and other related fishing jobs, on the way to establishing 3 different fishing companies and stores, with varying degrees of success. They also raised their sons in the fishing industry where they all worked, in various capacities, supporting the family's fish stores. Of all of the Tews family of fishermen, Emil's brother Edward G. Tews, Jr. is the only one documented to have been a lake captain, and also the only one later to become a Bayview lake captain, when the family left Jones Island. Undoubtedly, other members of the Tews family became lake captains. It's just that Edward G. Jr. is the only one that's documented. See a special episode on Edward G. Tews, Jr., previously published on this channel. Altogether, there were 3 Tews fish stores in Milwaukee, only one of which was in Bayview. The first one is documented as early as 1892, and flourished for over 30 years, until the mid-1920s. Emil Tews' uncle Frederick Tews, and his sons William and George, and later other descendants, started up and operated a fish and oyster store on 1st Street in Walker's Point. It was named Fred Tews and Son, though other similar names were used over the years. This would be the most successful and longest-lasting of the 3 different fish stores operated by the Tews family. The second Tews fish store, and next successful, was operated by Emil Tews' brother and future Bayview lake captain Edward G. Tews, Jr., though the store itself wasn't in Bayview. After Jones Islanders were evicted from the island by the city of Milwaukee beginning around 1915, Edward G. Jr. followed the path of his uncle Frederick Tews by setting up his own fish dealer store on the west side of Milwaukee on 26th Avenue. Edward G. Jr. also lived above the shop. The 1923 Milwaukee City Directory lists Edward G. Jr.'s business on 26th Avenue as being named Fish, Oysters, and Game. Incredibly, the 1917 directory shows 40 different fish dealers and stores in Milwaukee, though by 1922 that number had dwindled to 29. The third and final fish business in the Tews family was established by Emil Tews after he left his job keeping Milwaukee's Pierhead Light. This was to be Bayview's only fish store, and it operated for only 2 years, from 1918 to 19. Prior to this store, the Brager family fish store had come the closest to being in Bayview, but was actually on the Kinnickinnic River, northwest and outside of Bayview's northern boundary. Emil Tews, initially a fisherman, had worked in the 1890s at his Uncle Frederick's fish store on First Street. This would have made him completely familiar with the fishing business when he decided to return to it after 16 years tending the light. With this background of the Tews family fishing business, for unknown reasons, Emil decided to make a complete change of pace in 1900 by becoming a lighthouse keeper for the Pierhead light station in Milwaukee Harbour. He stayed in this job for 16 years through 1916, being promoted over the years to become the light's first assistant keeper. During just one of his years at the light, 1905, he lived at a home in Bayview, now torn down, that was located between 2457 and 2460 South Wentworth Avenue, at the intersection of Potter. This thus makes him Bayview's only lighthouse keeper. Emil Tews most likely lived the other 15 years in the lighthouse's official dwelling, built specifically for the lighthouse keepers, as was the norm for the time. There actually appear to have been 2 dwellings for light keepers at the Milwaukee Pierhead Light. One photo shows both a larger structure that likely held 2 keepers and their families, as well as a smaller one attached to the light and reached by a 100-foot-long pier, extending out into the bay. As the first assistant keeper, Emil Tews would have likely qualified for one of the 2 living spaces that appear to have been available. His job title of first assistant keeper implies there was a second assistant keeper. Because Emil doesn't appear to have had a family, maybe he lived in the smaller structure attached to the light, while the lighthouse keeper and the second assistant and their families lived in the top and bottom floors of the larger structure closer to the mainland. This is not known, however. As mentioned earlier, after 16 years as a lighthouse keeper, Emil departed his job at the Pierhead Light and returned to the fishing business. Right after he left, Emil started and operated a fish store from 1918 to 19 at 2315 to 17 South Howell Avenue, the current site of the Guanajuato Mexican restaurant. This made him the only fish store owner and operator in Bayview history. After this business apparently failed, there were no further records discovered, Emil became a firefighter for the city of Milwaukee, starting in 1920, and remained so for the rest of his life. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Emil C. Tews, as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now by individual volumes on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it, as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website under the Contribute button, as well as in the end credits at the conclusion of this video. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview Lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 lake captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with the instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. It's free, fun, and available any time you're out walking. Just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.